Roger Marshall is a Republican member of the House of Representatives for the 1st Congressional District in the state of Kansas. He has participated in some of the negotiations for a new NAFTA. He joins me now from his office. Representative Marshall, first of all, good of you to take a little time out of a busy day, I know, to give us your perspective on the NAFTA negotiations and where they might be heading. Thanks for doing this.
Glad to be here. Always happy to talk to my friends up north and see if we can get some agreement on NAFTA.
All right, let's see where we are then. You're fond of saying that you represent the second most NAFTA-dependent district in the United States. So give us some idea of what that means in the context of NAFTA negotiations with Canada.
Yeah, so my district is basically an agriculture producing district. We've doubled the number of agriculture exports since NAFTA. And we probably have as many jobs that are NAFTA dependent on any district in the entire country. So NAFTA has been great for my district and very important and highest priority for us to get this NAFTA agreement wrapped up again.
Okay, so where do you think we are? We've heard some rather pessimistic comments from the trade representative, Mr. Lighthizer, today, saying, look, there's still some challenges to overcome. He's holding firm to the deadline of this Sunday to get a deal with Canada. How do you feel about the way Canada has been negotiating?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe 6 months ago, we didn't think they were quite as engaged or motivated as Mexico was. And I think there's just different political climates going on. Mexico very motivated to get this done before they change over their president. And then you all have elections coming up. I think they start in October or November as well. So there's different political winds blowing. Sure, I wish Canada was more engaged, but I'm not to be the judge of that.
Okay, well, like we do have some provincial elections here that may play a role in how the Canadian side is negotiating. But, I mean, we've heard some of your colleagues talk about Canada dragging its feet, talking about Canada needing to step up its game. What do you see?
Well, certainly it's game time. We know that. We're going to proceed with this agreement with Mexico, and it would be better for all of us if Canada came to the game today and finished up. We're down to maybe 2 or 3 critical issues, the Class 7 milk issue and some of the dispute settlement issues. They talk about Chapter 19. So I think it is game time. There's not going to be anything different in November than today, so surely there's an opportunity to put the finishing touches on this deal, and all 3 of us can move forward.
The final decision on trade agreements lies with the Congress, not the President or the Executive, and you've talked about the significance of that. So let me ask you, will you support a new trade deal that comes before Congress that excludes Canada?
Yes, I would. The original NAFTA agreement was between Canada and the United States, and Mexico was brought in later. If we have to do kind of the corollary of that, and the United States and Mexico do it first and bring in Canada, that's what we'll have to do. In my state, we often talk about taking a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So we have a bird in the hand and feel like we need to proceed with Mexico. I'm afraid if we don't do it now with Mexico, that part of it would be starting all over with the new president. It might take another 2 years. So we can't afford to do that. So we need to get the deal done with Mexico, but I would much prefer to have Canada in at the same time.
Canada seems to fall back a lot. We hear that conversation with our politicians that it's counting on friends in Congress to in fact, put up a hand and flash the red light at a deal that doesn't include Canada. You seem to be suggesting that Canada shouldn't be counting on all those friends in Congress, that if push comes to shove and Canada's not there when this comes before Congress, Congress is going to support a deal without Canada. Is that your feeling?
Absolutely. I can't speak for everybody. I'm not taking a poll on this, but I think most of us realize how important it is to get something done with Mexico before they change their president. I just think the politics of the situation would push us over the top. I think that when President Trump takes the lead on something, he's pretty well had his way. And most of us will follow him and take his lead on it as well.
Yeah, Canada is one of the sticking issues seems to be from the Canadian side at this point, that Canada wants guarantees that the U.S. won't impose any more tariffs and will withdraw the ones it has already imposed on steel and aluminum. Do you support the president on tariffs? Is Canada making a reasonable request or not?
I think it's a reasonable request. I think that if we can get the Chapter 7 figured out when it comes to milk and have that withdrawn, if we can figure out what to do on dispute settlements that should be good enough. And I certainly understand where Canada is coming from, and that's the whole purpose of a trade agreement, is so that there wouldn't be tariffs. The tariffs are a tax on consumers. They don't do anybody any good, so surely we can come to an agreement here.
Do you wish the president had not imposed tariffs?
I'm not sure. I guess the question, I hate to ask you a question, would Canada be at the negotiating table right now if those tariffs had not been implemented? Other than the threat for withdrawal, it seemed like there was nothing else that really brought Canada seriously to the negotiating table. And until those tariffs were implemented, my impression was Canada was not fully engaged.
You've talked about the farmers in your state, and certainly, and we should point out, Kansas has a fairly remarkably growing dairy farm industry, which it didn't have even a couple of decades ago. And you've talked about some of the demands on milk, but in this country, and I want you to respond to that. In this country, the farmers here say, look, we're not responsible for the problems in dairy in the United States. And as I said, Kansas is fast growing in production of dairy products. Farmers in this country say they're being targeted because the U.S. dairy industry just isn't efficient and produces way too much milk. What's your response to that?
Certainly I understand Canada's supply management and why you all do it that way and why you have the high tariffs on our milk. But my concern is the milk processing part of this. We also have dairy processing in Kansas. So we take that milk, we evaporate out the water, there's some milk fats, and then there's the protein. And the milk protein is the issue that we have with. So as near as I can tell, the Canadian government is subsidizing that milk processing in Canada. And when they're able to sell the milk protein on the world market, the milk protein is sold for much less than what we can sell it for, we feel like it's undercutting, and it costs us a couple $100 million a year. So that's the part that we have the problem, and it all kind of started with this Class 7 milk processing issue.
Okay, let's finish on this. Clearly, we're heading down a different road, but the president's always been fond of describing NAFTA as the worst trade deal ever. Do you feel the same way?
No, I don't. NAFTA's been great for Kansas. It's made probably several 100,000 jobs. We've doubled the number of exports we've had. NAFTA has been great for agriculture in Kansas. I understand his concerns about manufacturing and some of the impact it's had on those types of jobs, but I think the net is it's been tremendous for all three countries. And that's what we have to do going forward. How do we find the win-win situation in NAFTA? What type of a NAFTA agreement can be a win for Canada, a win for Mexico, and a win for the United States? And I think that can happen.
All right. Well, we'll see what unfolds in the next few days in particular. But Representative Marshall, pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for taking time to speak with us here in Canada.
Yeah, thanks for having me.